I'll start. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sandubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we're speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, text 2. Very famous verse, very beautiful verse. And this is the month that we're celebrating or honoring Srimad Bhagavatam and how it has impacted each of our lives. I picked this verse because it's one of my favorites. And I'm hoping you can see my screen here.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit more so it's clear. So let's recite the verse. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam Vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapatrayonmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparishvara Sadyoridhyavarudhyatetra Kritibhi Shubhistakshana. So the translation goes like this. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. I'm going to pick a certain sections of the verses that Prabhupada discusses. I'm going to take us back to the verse and then read that section of the purport. So the Bhagavatam, three main things that I'm going to focus on from the purport. The first is freedom from envy. So the first line says, Dharma projita kaitavo. Atra. Atra means here. So you'll see twice in this verse, the word atra is used. In the first line, three times. Atra, atra, and atra. So the verse is repeatedly focusing on atra, meaning here, herein, in this book. The verses, the composition, it's kind of bringing the attention of the reader that what you have in your hand is really something special. So that's why the word atra is used three times. Atra, 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 herein. Just like in a book, generally you'll have in the back of the book, or even in the front of the book, you'll have a little quote that speaks of the glories of that book or appreciations of that book. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, within the verses of the Bhagavatam itself, because it's transcendental, it gives us uh, some kind of marketing, if you will, some kind of attraction of why the Srimad Bhagavatam is so amazing. So the first line, Dharma Projita Kaitavotra. In this book, Dharma Projita Kaitava, any Kaitava Dharma, any cheating or materially motivated religion is Projita. Ujjita means to throw out. Pra-ujjita is to completely reject it. And it is Parama. It is speaking of the highest truth. For who? Nirmatsaranam satam. For those devotees, for those great souls who are nirmatsaranam. Matsara, you may know, matsara means envy. Nirmatsara or nih, N-I-H, is to negate something in Sanskrit. So when you combine it with matsara, then it is nirmatsara or without envy. For those great souls, satam, the word satam is used many times in the Bhagavatam, which is indicating devotees. Sat means truth, and satam means those who are pursuing the absolute truth. Therefore, it means devotees. In other places in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada translates it as those who are thoroughly honest. I really, really appreciate that translation. Satam meaning thoroughly honest. As we approach Krishna, who is that amazing absolute truth, we become progressively more honest and truthful in our lives. So that's this idea of satam. And as we become more real and truthful, nirmatsaranam, one becomes free from envy. So Prabhupada focuses on this in the purport, this idea of being free of envy. And it's dealt with from the perspective of understanding a competition-less society. So there's a lot in the purport, so I'm not going to read everything. Here we go. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all these sense gratificatory activities. It is purely transcendental literature which can be understood only by the pure devotees of the Lord who are transcendental to competitive sense gratification. In the material world, there's a keen competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community, nation and nation. I was speaking with my wife yesterday that, my heart sinks thinking about the pains that are going through in the world right now. And it's not unique to this particular time period, it's for all time. We have these kind of competition between animal and animal, man and man. We recently heard of in a Catholic church, just a couple of days ago, in a Catholic church, students were getting together for Mass, and the parishioners were there, young children, and one of the former student outside the church had bought weapons illegally and started to shoot through the windows. Innocent children were wounded. 2 children died, age of 8 and 10, in their place of worship. So it's not just competition, it's violence. When envy, matsara, the word in the verse, matsara, when it becomes really strong, it turns into violence. Or violence is a symptom of envy. And we see is like, this Catholic Church situation, or you see Israel and Gaza, or you see Russia and Ukraine, and oh my God, it's just nonstop competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community, nation and nation. But the devotees of the Lord rise above such competitions. They do not compete with the materialists because they're on the path back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. Such transcendentalists are non-envious and pure in heart. In the material world, however, everyone is envious of everyone else, and therefore there is competition. But the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from material envy, but in fact, going a little deeper, not just free of envy, they well wishes to everyone. And they strive to establish a competition-less society with God in the center. Very, very powerful messages, um, very edifying, that we as devotees, as we're trying to practice Krishna consciousness, to have in our hearts this sense of non-enviousness. Because the verse is saying you can't really understand Srimad Bhagavatam unless you become non-envious. It's meant for those who are non-envious. And here's the beauty of the Bhagavatam, that just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, doesn't matter how much envy we might have in our hearts, just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, continuously, every day, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, the envy starts to wane. The sense of competition and fighting with another person, sometimes even a devotee, another aspiring devotee, you might get into conflicts and fights. That starts to wane because you now see God in the center. But when God is not in the center, at the drop of a hat, it becomes so easy to get into conflicts. Think about your workplace, think about the school environment or wherever that we hang out at. So easy to get into this, you know, competition and envy and fighting. And so the transcendental devotees of the Lord, they become neutral, anapeksha. According to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says one of the qualities of his devotee, one of the qualities of devotee that pleases Krishna very much is anapeksha. Paksha means to take a side. Anapeksha means he doesn't take a side. So this freedom from envy is our pathway to hearing and fully imbibing, understanding the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's really important. We need to sort of really imbibe this message. It's not an easy one. Next, I'll go back to the verse. So that was the first line. The second line, Vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapo trayon mulanam. Here some of the benefits of Srimad Bhagavatam are being described. Atra, in this book, Vedyam Vastavam, you get to know Vastu. Vastu means that which is real. Everything else is category. Prabhupada uses the contrast between substance and category. Vastu is substance, and everything else in this world is category or energy of the Supreme. So you get to know this. Vedyam Vastavam Atra. You get to know this idea of Vastu, and then when you know Vastu, you Shivadam. It gives auspiciousness. Shiva means auspiciousness, Dam is to give. So it gives auspiciousness. Not only that, Tapa Trayon Mulanam. Tapa means misery, difficulties, pain. Tapa is austerity, where you voluntarily take up some pain for spiritual benefit. Tapa is forced upon you, is miseries that you can't uh, adjust, and they just happen in your life. And there's three times of tapa. Traya. Traya means three. So there are three kinds of tapa. First is the miseries coming from other living entities, which is usually one of the worst ones we deal with, or the most difficult ones to deal with. Let's say we get blamed, we feel betrayed, etc., etc. Tapatraya, that's the first one, from other living entities. Or nowadays, there's a lot of mosquitoes Miseries coming from mosquitoes is also one, the first tapa. Miseries coming from other living entities. Second, misery is coming from our own body and mind. Our back, our knee, our health in different ways. We might have issues, or our minds. The anxieties we feel, or the boredom we feel, or the anger, or the all of those things. There's miseries from our own bodies and minds. That's the second kind of tapa. And the third kind of tapa is coming from natural causes, such as the big flash flooding that happened in Texas, or earthquakes, etc. So Bhagavatam, what does it do? Unmulanam. Mula means root. Unmulanam means to uproot. It uproots these three types of miseries. So as we come in touch with the Vastu, Krishna, two things, Shivadam and Tapotrayan Mulanam. These two benefits. You see, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is written by Sri Rupa Goswami, he discusses that when one takes up sadhana bhakti, the first two leaves unfurl, the creep of bhakti grows. The first two leaves that unfold are two types. The first thing is called um, uh, Kleshagni and Shubhada. Kleshagni means removal of kleshas or difficulties. And Shubhada is that it gives auspiciousness. That's a path of bhakti. So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami fully aligns here with the Srimad Bhagavatam that says these two things. It gives auspiciousness, and tapotrain mulanam, it removes miseries of life. In Rupa Goswami's book, he discusses that Shivadam means that one gains wonderful qualities, actually: compassion, kindness, tolerance, forgiveness, um, balanced, equipoise, sense control, etc. So this is the result of Atra being in the association of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the way Prabhupada explains this idea of Tapatrayan Mulanam, let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. This knowledge that the energy of the Lord is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord is an answer to the mental speculator's attempt to establish the energy as the absolute. When this knowledge is factually understood, one sees the conceptions of monism and dualism to be imperfect. So Vastu, when you really understand Vastu, development of this transcendental consciousness, grounded in the conception of simultaneously one and different, leads one immediately to the stage of freedom from threefold miseries of life. Our acharyas describe that as soon as we come to this, acharyas who are commenting on this verse, they said as soon as we come to this consciousness that I am Krishna's servant, then tapatrayon mulanam, all miseries get uprooted. Not just conceptual understanding, but it's a deep conviction in the heart. I am Krishna's servant eternally. Then the threefold miseries, which are miseries arising from body and mind, miseries afflicted by other living entities, miseries from natural catastrophes, over which one has no control. Srimad Bhagavatam begins with the surrender of the devotee unto the Absolute Person. The devotee is fully aware he is one with the Absolute and at the same time in the eternal position of servant to the Absolute. In the material conception, while one falsely thinks himself the Lord of all he surveys and therefore is always troubled by the threefold miseries of life. But as soon as one comes to know his real position as transcendental servant, he at once becomes free from all miseries. It's a very liberating concept to know that we are Krishna's servant. Okay, let's move on. The third line of the verse, This is where the word Srimad Bhagavatam is introduced. Srimad Bhagavate, the first time we see this Srimad Bhagavatam written in the Bhagavatam itself. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaporair. So I'll stop there. Ishvara is actually for the next line. Ishvara Sadhyo Ridhyavarate. So in the third line, Srimad Bhagavate, this Srimad Bhagavatam. So it says Atra in the first line, Atra, and instead of Atra, it actually, instead of the pronoun, it uses a noun itself. It says Srimad Bhagavatam, and then again Atra. So each line is pointing to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this Srimad Bhagavatam, it is compiled by Mahamuni Krite. It has been compiled by the Mahamuni Vyasadeva. And we see in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavatam, well, 5th, 6th, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th chapter of this first canto of the Bhagavatam, the story of Vyasadeva is described, of how he came about to even write this literature. In the very beginning of the 7th chapter of this first canto, in text 4, it is described Bhakti Yogena Manasi Samyak Praniti Male Pashyat Purusham Punyam Maya Tad Apashrayam. Vyasadeva has seen the Supreme Lord by the power of his devotional service, and he's seen the illusion behind the Supreme Lord. So Vyasadeva has this amazing realization. He has already compiled all the Vedas, he's even compiled the Mahabharata, and he's still feeling the pinprick in his heart. And only after he compiles the Srimad Bhagavatam does that pinprick in his heart go away. And it is done after his maturity of realization. He actually sees Krishna personally. After that vision of direct audience of the Lord, he compiles this Srimad Bhagavatam. What we are receiving, my dear devotees, what we receive here in the Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature, as described, like how Prabhupada explains, is the mature realizations of Sri Vyasadeva. We're getting to hear from someone who has seen God. Therefore, Kim Vaparer, what is the use of any other literature? This Srimad Bhagavatam, by the way, is 18,000 verses. One can study it a few times and still not know what's, all of the parts in its entirety. The Srimad Bhagavatam is an ocean. Why do you need any other literature? Our whole life is uh, cannot put a dent in the ocean of the Bhagavatam. We cannot really penetrate the mysteries of the Bhagavatam, even in the several decades we might have in our life. We don't need any other literature. This Srimad Bhagavatam is enough. Something that I had a question about is Vyasadeva is compiling these verses because the first few verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the first few verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are all Vyasadev's words himself. Then he introduces Suta Goswami, then it's Suta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya, and then Suta Goswami introduces Shukadeva Goswami, and then it's the words of Shukadeva Goswami and the sages of and Maharaj Parikshit and the sages around him. But only here in the beginning of the Bhagavatam we see Vyasadev's words directly. So if Vyasadeva is writing this verse, then how is it that Vyasadeva is calling himself Mahamuni? He's calling himself this great Muni, this great sage. I did not find the answer to that question in the commentary by, Srila Swami or Jiva Goswami. None of them addressed that question. My understanding is that for a great soul like Vyasadeva, he sees that his ability to even speak the Bhagavatam or write the Bhagavatam is based on the mercy of his spiritual master Narad Muni. So we may see Mahamuni Krite as Vyasadeva writing it. When he writes it, it's very possible, It's a speculation on my part. Very possible he's thinking of his own spiritual master, Narad Muni, by Narad Muni's mercy is being put together. Finally, the last line. Ishvara sadhyo ridhya varudhyate trakritibi shushushubhi stakshana. So for one who, kritibi, is a pious person, shushushubi, very carefully, attentively, submissively, ardently, eagerly, anxiously, hears the Srimad Bhagavatam, then twice in this phrase here, sadhya means immediately, within the heart, riddhi, avarudhyate. Ishvara avarudhyate. Krishna becomes compact or encapsulated, if you will, within the heart, sadhya, immediately or very soon, and then takshanat, without delay. So twice this verse, this last line is saying, without delay, very soon, Krishna manifests in the heart of who? Of those pious persons who are shushushubis, very eager. The way Prabhupada explains it, and let's read the purport because it's so beautiful. Okay. It's right here. The Supreme Lord becomes fixed in the heart of the devotee immediately. Lord Chaitanya has recommended the Srimad Bhagavatam as a spotless Puran, Amala Puran, and distinguishes it from all other Puranas. The proper method for receiving this transcendental message is to hear it submissively. A challenging attitude cannot help one realize this transcendental message. One particular word is used herein for proper guidance. This word is shushu, shu. Su, shu, shru, shu. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. Prabhupada says one must be anxious to hear this transcendental message. The desire to sincerely hear is the first qualification. Now, how can we be anxious to hear? Unless we feel this void in the heart that I need the Srimad Bhagavatam. And unless we have some taste of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we will not have this anxiety to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. So where does this anxiety to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam come from? Later in the second chapter, it is discussed that Shushushosha Vasudeva Katharuchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevanat. So this word Shushushosha comes again in that verse, and it says to get this eagerness, this ruchi, this taste for hearing Krishna Katha, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, it requires shushusho, carefully serving the great devotees, very attentively serving the great devotees. So with faith and affection, serving great devotees, we get this taste to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. When we get this taste to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, we become anxious to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is the first qualification. Less fortunate persons are not at all interested in hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but application is difficult. Unfortunate persons find enough time to hear idle social and political conversations, but when invited to attend a meeting of devotees to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, they suddenly become reluctant. Sometimes professional readers of the Bhagavatam immediately plunge into the confidential topics of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, which they seemingly interpret as sex literature, referring to the 10th canto and exchanges of Krishna with gopis. But Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the beginning. Those who are fit to assimilate this work are mentioned in the shloka. One becomes qualified to hear Srimad Bhagavatam after many pious deeds. Kritibi. This is actually Prabhupada is commenting from Jiva Goswami's message that who can actually hear Srimad Bhagavatam? It's the Kritibi. It's these pious persons. The intelligent person with thoughtful discretion can be assured by the great sage Vyasadeva that he can realize the personality of Godhead directly by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Without undergoing the different stages of realization set forth in the Vedas, one can be lifted immediately to the position of Paramhamsa simply by agreeing to receive this message. It's so nice. Where this is an elevator method. We don't have to follow all of the processes given in the Vedas. Just by agreeing to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can be lifted to that transcendental Paramhamsa position. So it's not, the verse says twice, Sadhya and Takshanad happens very soon. But what's very soon? Some of us have been practicing for many, many years. What does very soon look like? We're looking around saying it's not very soon. But there's two things there. Number one is our own maybe succumbing to offenses, which really puts hurdles on our path of Krishna consciousness. But the second, very soon, if you think about it, we've been at this material journey for a long, long time, many, many lifetimes. And so if it takes a few decades to get somewhat purified, that's really very soon. When you step back and think about the many lifetimes we've been living, very soon is can be considered even a few decades, no doubt. So our path of Srimad Bhagavat, our path of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is our doorway to the spiritual world, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. And then bhakti becomes utpadyate, becomes awakened. I can say personally, I'll just share that Srimad Bhagavatam, study of Srimad Bhagavatam has been a lifeline for me. And I'm super, super, super grateful to Prabhupada that you know, of everything that Prabhupada brought from India when he came to the West, he brought himself and he brought the Srimad Bhagavatam. He didn't bring much else. I mean, he brought 40 rupees, which was almost nothing. And this Srimad Bhagavatam has given at least me so much, you know, clarity, solace, shelter at times of difficulty. I had a very, very, just yesterday, I just had a really stressful, painful day at work without all the details, but just this verse, reading this verse again, reciting the verse again, and reading of Prabhupada's commentary and the commentaries of Acharyas, so much flood of peace and calm and vision and clarity and direction of how to engage in my workplace, for example, is so beneficial, so wonderful. And I don't know if any of us do, but certainly I don't have deserved to receive this gift of the Bhagavatam. But here we are. We have the Bhagavatam. It's really, really nice. Really nice. I'll pause there and see if there's any comments or questions on this verse. Beautiful verse.
I have a couple of things I'd like to share.
Yeah, please.
One, this point you made about envy leads to violence really struck a chord. And I'm specifically thinking of violence at the level of our speech. And, you know, the situations that you and I become aware of with the use of power within our institution and how people in positions of power can use speech in a way that doesn't uplift and support, but can sometimes put people down. And in comparison, we see that Prabhupada built this movement one person at a time. Like when we read the story of how he started the Hare Krishna movement, it's these personal one-on-one exchanges that were so full of uplifting and supportive speech that made these people fully committed to joining him and spreading the movement. And on the contrary, our misuse of power can one person at a time destroy what he has worked so hard to build. And yesterday I was reading an anecdote from Paris where Prabhupada, all these devotees, they're huddled up in a corner in Prabhupada's room because it's a small room, and Prabhupada has, just arrived, and all this pomp and fare. And then all of a sudden, these devotees hear, Yogeshwar Prabhu is writing, these devotees hear, who's responsible? So they're like, what's he talking about? And Prabhupada is looking at a plant that is wilted.
Mm.
And then he takes the plant to the sink in the bathroom and he puts water on it. And he says, never, like, the care with which Prabhupada treated that plant is like, we must take care of every living entity.
Wow.
So our speech should be so uplifting. What to speak of, Prabhupada paying attention to this one little wilted plant in a Hare Krishna temple.
Mm.
And the other thought, a stream of thought, is related to the Mahamuni. How Prabhupada will write purports, and then at the end he'll say, thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the third canto,
Mm-hmm.
And so we also see Prabhupada referring to himself as Bhaktivedanta because that's a title he was given.
Mm-hmm.
And then we read in his Jaladuta prayer where Prabhupada says, I have been given this title of Bhaktivedanta. Now it is up to you, my Lord, to fulfill the purport of what Bhaktivedanta means.
Yeah.
So I see a similar mood with, Mahamuni is, a title for Vyasadeva.
Mm.
And this full dependence on the Supreme Lord to fulfill the purport of what these lofty titles mean.
Mm. Nice. Yeah, I had
Thank
thought
you.
about the same explanation for that. Is a potential of why Vyasadeva himself wrote Mahamuni, that that he seems himself, given a very important service to serve society by writing it down. Yeah. Okay, anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Please accept my humble obeisances, all Master Guru Maharaj Srila Prabhupada.
Mine too.
It was wonderful class as usual, and you have just made us anxious to hear more from you.
Ah,
Hare Krishna. So nice. And this wonderful verse. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your kind words. Very encouraging always, as usual. As usual, you are very encouraging. Okay. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj. As usual, a wonderful class and very relevant. I was just telling Premananda Mataji's class too the other day, the heartaches that come up every day.
Mm.
And so much is, like you said, because of envy and competition, and it is so deep set. It's like, I know. I mean, we try. We have the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we at least have this higher taste, higher knowledge, but it is so deep set. Keeps
Mm.
coming up,
Mm.
and yeah, it's almost every day there's something or the other. And like you said, it is the Srimad Bhagavatam. At the end of the day, when we have the reading groups and whatever, and it's like, okay, just forget everything else. And just the Srimad Bhagavatam is just such a treasure,
Mm.
such a treasure. But yeah, thank you for going, through the purport line by line, and really nice.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Much
you
fun.
for your
Hare
comments.
Krishna.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? There's a one thought I was having as you were speaking, Mother Chintamani, that Jiva Goswami, I believe, expresses in commentary of this verse that tapatrayun mulanam, that the removal of miseries is not necessarily that miseries stop happening. The world will still continue with its painful aspects. But what changes is for the devotee, they start to see the miseries as the Lord's mercy. That's the spiritual advancement.
Yes.
And now one may say, what's the mercy in like, dealing with a competition full society that has all this envy in it? Part of the mercy is our journey of Krishna consciousness is deeper and deeper dependence on Krishna. It's a journey of dependence. So we might feel like we're in a desert and the advancement is not quick enough. And we have to go through this desert to experience, to slowly shift our dependence on ourselves or material assets to dependence on Krishna. And that is a gradual process. And that dependence on Krishna is what becomes the joy that we start to feel within as we are experiencing this competition full society that we're in. And so
Yeah.
that's the challenge. I mean, we've got to do like we're dealing with all kinds of painful circumstances, and how do we depend more on Krishna in those circumstances? That's our challenge.
Yes, Prabhu. Very true. And sometimes, we know it, right? We have that overarching understanding, but we forget when we're in the thick of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we really need to keep reminding us that this is for our good. This is so we can deepen our dependence. Thank you.
I have my wife gave me a little gift where she, printed a nice verse that I like in the Bhagavad Gita, that I've sort of put as a plaque in my office at work,
Oh.
that says, Machita, no, not much. Machita sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi atachetvam ahankaram nashorsasi vinangshasi. Krishna says, if you act by ahankar, you will be lost.
Mm.
Machita sarva durgani. If your consciousness is on me, then all sarva durgani, all these problems, obstacles that you face, mat prasada, by my mercy, mat prasad tarishyasi, you'll cross over all of them by my mercy.
Mm.
But if you work with your ahankar, you'll be lost.
Lost.
So yeah, so I keep it right in front of me now, trying to see, oh yeah, Krishna.
It's a great idea. Keep it in front. Thank you.
That's amazing, amazing.
All right, we're at 8:15. If there's no final comment, then we'll end here. Thank you all very much for your kind participation. Srila Prabhupada ki